Hey guys, tonight we're going to step into the quiet, meditative world of the Japanese samurai. Picture yourself walking through a peaceful garden, the soft rustle of bamboo leaves in the wind, and the distant sound of a waterfall. The air smells fresh with the scent of pine and earth. As you walk, you notice the samurai nearby, calm, composed, eyes narrowed in deep focus. It's a world you might think is far from your own, filled with honor, combat, and strict codes of conduct. But here's the twist. These warriors weren't just fighters. They were masters of mindfulness, developing practices that might surprise you. You probably won't survive if you tried to live their life, though. Samurai discipline was seriously hardcore. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And feel free to drop where you're watching from and what time it is in your neck of the woods. I'm curious how far our peaceful journey stretches tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The samurai, those warriors of feudal Japan, are often thought of only for their skill with a katana or their loyalty to their lords. However, there's much more to them than battle. These fierce fighters lived by Bushido, the way of the warrior, a strict code of honor. But they didn't just live for combat. They were also scholars, poets, and gardeners. In fact, a lot of their daily practices were built around mindfulness. For the samurai, the act of remaining calm, present, and aware was just as important as their ability to fight. They didn't just sharpen their swords, they sharpened their minds. From tea ceremonies to Zen practices, every part of their day was filled with moments that required undivided attention. But why, you may wonder, would these fierce warriors focus so much on calmness and reflection? Historians still debate whether it was purely to prepare for battle, or if they were genuinely seeking enlightenment. Whatever the reason, one thing is clear. The samurai's connection to mindfulness ran deep, and it permeated almost every aspect of their lives. You might be surprised to find how intertwined their martial prowess and mindfulness truly were. Let's step into their world and explore the unique ways in which the samurai practiced mindfulness. As we continue, let's dive into Bushido, the code that shaped every aspect of a samurai's life. It wasn't just about fighting. Bushido was a philosophy, a way of life, and a guide for how samurai interacted with the world. The word itself translates to the way of the warrior, but in reality, it extended far beyond the battlefield. Historians have long pondered the exact origins of Bushido, but it's widely accepted that it drew from a mix of Confucianism, Shintoism, and Zen Buddhism. These influences made Bushido more than just a set of rules for combat. It became a framework for living with honor, integrity, and crucially, mindfulness. At the heart of Bushido was the concept of rectitude, the idea that a samurai's actions, no matter how small, should align with moral virtue. They believed that a warrior's mind should be as sharp as his sword, and as such, mental discipline was just as important as physical prowess. Imagine a samurai preparing for a duel, not just by practicing his sword techniques, but by sitting quietly in reflection, focusing on clearing his mind. Every action was an opportunity for mindfulness, whether it was walking to battle or caring for his sword. Everything was connected, and every action was part of the warrior's spiritual practice. Historians still argue whether Bushido's moral teachings were truly universal among samurai, or whether they evolved over time into a more formalized code during the Edo period. Some suggest that the Bushido we know today was more of a romanticized ideal, crafted centuries after the samurai's heyday, while others claim it was always central to their identity. But one thing is certain. Bushido was more than just a code. For battle, it was a mental practice that guided the samurai's approach to life, death, and everything in between. In fact, it was often said that a samurai who couldn't maintain mental clarity could not be trusted with a blade. So, while it might seem like a warrior's life was all about steel and strength, Bushido's principles of mental focus, calmness, under pressure, and clarity were just as important as any sword technique. And through Bushido, the samurai found a way to incorporate mindfulness into every moment. Whether in battle or in stillness, the code taught them to be present, always aware of their surroundings, and to act with purpose. It was this constant practice of mindfulness that made them some of the most disciplined and revered warriors in history. Now that we've covered the mental framework of Bushido, let's explore a practice that was central to the samurai's daily life: the tea ceremony. You might not think of tea as a weapon of war, but for samurai, it was a serious form of mindfulness. Known as chanoyu, the Japanese tea ceremony was a ritualized preparation and serving of tea that emphasized tranquility, discipline, and the beauty of simplicity. What might surprise you is that this tea ceremony was not just an idle pastime. It was a crucial part of the samurai's practice of mindfulness. You see, the tea ceremony was a highly structured affair. The preparation of the tea, the cleanliness of the utensils, the precise movements, all of these elements required the samurai to be completely present in the moment. The simple act of preparing and serving tea was transformed into a form of meditation. Every movement had its purpose, and each step in the ceremony was an opportunity to practice focus, calmness, and appreciation of the present moment. Historians still argue whether the tea ceremony's widespread adoption by samurai came directly from Zen Buddhist teachings, or whether it evolved independently as a way for samurai to maintain mental clarity. Either way, it became a deeply ingrained part of their lifestyle. Samurai would engage in tea ceremonies to center themselves, particularly in times of war or personal turmoil. The tea ceremony wasn't just about drinking tea, it was a form of mental exercise that allowed the samurai to clear their minds and restore their sense of balance. One of the most famous practitioners of tea ceremony was Sen no Rikyu, a tea master who was so revered by the samurai that he became an icon of spiritual discipline. His approach to tea emphasized wabi-sabi, the appreciation of imperfection and the beauty of simplicity. This was a perfect fit for the samurai's ideals. After all, their lives were built around the notion that beauty could be found in the most austere and humble aspects of life, whether in a blade, a garden, or a bowl of tea. The tea ceremony was a way for them to embrace the present, focus on their breath, and find serenity amidst chaos. To truly grasp the impact of this practice, imagine yourself in the dimly lit room of a samurai's house, the delicate clink of porcelain echoing in the quiet space. The world outside may be on the brink of war, but for this moment, it's just you, the tea, and the stillness of your mind. The calming effects of this practice were profound, helping samurai sharpen their mental faculties, enhance their decision-making, and find clarity in their emotions. It was a discipline that sharpened more than just the body. It sharpened the mind. The connection between Zen Buddhism and samurai mindfulness is profound, and now it's time to take a closer look at how this philosophy influenced their lives. Zen, which emphasizes direct experience and the cultivation of a calm, focused mind, was a natural fit for the samurai. The Zen principles that guided their actions are still present in many traditional martial arts practices today, but during the samurai era, they were even more deeply integrated into the warrior's daily routines. When you think of Zen, you might imagine monks in tranquil monasteries, chanting or meditating in stillness. But for samurai, Zen was a practical philosophy, one that could help them sharpen their minds for both battle and peace. Zen taught them to focus on the present moment, to clear the mind of distractions, and to achieve mental clarity. These teachings directly aligned with the samurai's need for precision, self-discipline, and, importantly, calmness under pressure. Historians still debate the extent to which Zen Buddhism influenced the samurai, with some arguing that the connection between the two was more of a cultural fusion, while others insist it was a cornerstone of the samurai's mental training. Regardless of the debate, the impact of Zen is undeniable. Samurai warriors were trained to meditate in order to clear their minds of distractions and focus entirely on the task at hand. This practice wasn't just about physical skill, it was about mental fortitude. Samurai who practiced Zen believed that their mental state could influence the outcome of a battle. By quieting their minds, they could achieve a state of heightened awareness and clarity that would help them react swiftly and decisively. One particular Zen practice that the samurai adopted was the practice of zazen, or seated meditation. Zazen involved sitting still in a specific posture, focusing on the breath and allowing the mind to settle. It was a way for the samurai to build mental discipline and to prepare for the intense focus required in combat. Imagine sitting in complete stillness for hours, clearing your mind of everything except your breath. For the samurai, this was not an exercise in relaxation, but in sharpening their ability to concentrate under the most intense circumstances. They would even meditate before battles to ensure they were in the right mental state, calm, centered, and prepared for whatever lay ahead. Zen also had a huge influence on the samurai's approach to life and death. In Zen teachings, death is viewed as a natural part of life, something that must be accepted rather than feared. For a samurai, this mindset was essential. Many samurai carried this Zen-inspired approach to death with them on the battlefield, understanding that their life was not something to be clung to desperately, but something to be used wisely in service of their code. This was the kind of mindset that allowed samurai to perform incredible feats of courage while remaining mentally composed. To them, death wasn't the end. It was simply another moment in the endless flow of life. The beauty of Zen's influence on the samurai was that it taught them to be fully present, not just in battle, but in every moment of their lives. Whether it was the quiet contemplation before a battle, the focused movements during a sword practice, or the delicate preparation of tea, Zen instilled a sense of mindfulness that pervaded every aspect of their lives. And that is exactly what made the samurai not just fearsome warriors, but disciplined, calm individuals who were able to maintain clarity in the most chaotic of circumstances. Samurai didn't just engage with their minds and spirits through abstract philosophies. They grounded their mindfulness in nature. As we step further into their world, we can see how deeply the samurai's connection with nature shaped their practice of mindfulness. Whether in the tranquil gardens of their homes or on long walks through forests, samurai were taught to view nature as a mirror of their own inner state. In a sense, they believed that the natural world was the ultimate teacher when it came to maintaining peace and focus. One of the most common practices samurai engaged in was seido, or the way of tea. But beyond this, they also practiced shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing. This practice, which might sound a bit odd in our modern, bustling world, involved spending time in the forest to reconnect with the natural world and calm the mind. Samurai would walk through forests, breathing in the fresh air and allowing the peaceful surroundings to help center their thoughts. The simple act of observing the trees, listening to the birds, and feeling the earth beneath their feet was a form of meditation in itself. Historians still debate whether this practice was specifically developed by samurai or if it was an ancient tradition that became more popular during the samurai period. Some argue that it was part of a much older Shinto tradition, where nature was seen as sacred and humans were expected to live in harmony with it. Others believe the samurai, with their deep need for clarity and peace of mind, simply adapted this practice to their own needs. Either way, Shinrin-yoku became an important tool for samurai seeking to sharpen their focus and cultivate mindfulness. This connection with nature wasn't limited to simple walks in the woods. Samurai often had meticulously planned gardens, small, quiet oases where they could reflect, meditate, and find clarity. These gardens were filled with symbolic elements, stones that represented mountains, ponds that mimicked the vastness of the ocean, and plants that reflected different stages of life. These symbolic gardens were designed to help the samurai stay grounded and present. They would spend hours meticulously tending to their gardens, reflecting on the cycles of life as they pruned, watered, and rearranged the plants. The act of tending to a garden was more than just a hobby or a pastime. It was a deeply mindful activity. Every action in the garden required full attention. When the samurai worked in their gardens, they were not thinking about the future or dwelling on the past. They were focusing solely on the present moment, the gentle movements of their hands, as they rearranged stones or clipped branches. This was the same kind of mindfulness they brought to every other part of their life, from preparing for battle to practicing their martial arts. Perhaps the most striking part of the samurais' connection with nature was their appreciation of simplicity. In everything they did, they sought to distill the complex world around them into simple, beautiful moments. The garden was a perfect embodiment of this idea: simple, natural beauty that required nothing more than presence and awareness to fully appreciate. It was in these quiet, reflective moments that the samurai learned how to calm their minds and sharpen their focus. They knew that, in order to be truly present, they had to first be at peace with themselves and their surroundings. So, as you imagine a samurai carefully tending his garden, surrounded by the quiet sounds of nature, remember that this practice wasn't just about aesthetics. It was a way of life, a reminder that to be truly mindful, one must be aware of both their inner state and the world around them. Whether it was a walk through the forest, a quiet moment by a pond, or the act of pruning a bonsai tree, nature was the perfect companion to the samurai's journey toward mental clarity. Now that we've explored the connection between the samurai and nature, let's dive into another practice that was central to their mindfulness: meditation. Specifically, the samurai were avid practitioners of zazen, a form of seated meditation that is still practiced by Zen Buddhists today. Zazen was more than just a way to relax or clear the mind. It was an essential tool for maintaining mental clarity and focus, both on the battlefield and in daily life. The samurai believed that their mental state could directly affect their physical performance. If their minds were cluttered or distracted, they would be less effective as warriors. This is where zazen came in. Practiced in the early hours of the morning, zazen required the samurai to sit in absolute stillness for extended periods of time, focusing only on their breath and the present moment. The idea was that by clearing the mind of distractions, they could achieve a state of heightened awareness and concentration. In a way, zazen was like sharpening a sword, an exercise in precision and focus that prepared the samurai for the challenges of the day ahead. Historians still argue about how widely zazen was practiced among samurai, as the samurai class was not monolithic. Some samurai were more inclined to embrace Zen Buddhism than others, but for those who did, the practice became integral to their lives. Zazen was not just a spiritual practice, it was a way of life. The physical stillness of zazen mirrored the mental stillness samurai sought to cultivate in every aspect of their existence. The samurai learned that, in order to act decisively and with clarity, they needed to quiet their minds and eliminate distractions. This is why zazen became a daily ritual for many samurai. It was a way to clear the mental fog and prepare for the demands of the day. To understand the practice of zazen, picture yourself in a quiet room, sitting cross-legged on a tatami mat. Your back is straight, your hands resting gently in your lap, and your eyes are half closed, focused on a single point in front of you. The only sound you hear is your own breath, slow, steady, and deep. With each exhale, you let go of any stray thoughts that may arise. You are present in the moment, fully aware of the stillness around you. For the samurai, this practice was a way to reset their minds, allowing them to enter each day with a clear sense of purpose and focus. In battle, this mental clarity was invaluable. Imagine yourself standing in the midst of a chaotic battlefield, the clashing of swords and the cries of warriors filling the air. In such a situation, it would be easy to become overwhelmed by the noise and the violence, but the samurai, through their daily practice of zazen, could maintain a sense of calm amidst the chaos. They were trained to stay present in the moment, to focus on the task at hand, and to remain calm no matter the circumstances. This ability to stay mentally centered in the face of danger was what made samurai such formidable warriors. Of course, zazen wasn't just for preparing for battle. It was also a way for the samurai to connect with their deeper spiritual selves. By sitting in stillness, they were able to confront their inner thoughts and emotions, gaining insight into their own minds. This introspection allowed them to cultivate a sense of wisdom and self-awareness, which in turn made them more balanced and effective individuals. Whether they were facing an enemy on the battlefield or navigating a difficult situation in their personal lives, the samurai could rely on the mental clarity they achieved through zazen to guide their actions. In today's fast-paced world, it can be hard to imagine how powerful a practice like zazen could be. But for the samurai, it was a tool that helped them achieve a state of perfect harmony between body and mind. It wasn't just about sitting still. It was about becoming one with the present moment, aligning their thoughts, emotions, and actions. This sense of alignment is something that many of us seek today, even if we don't always know how to find it. Perhaps in some small way, we can learn from the samurai's practice of zazen and bring a little more mindfulness into our own lives. As we continue our journey through the samurai's mindful life, let's turn to another practice that deeply influenced their focus and clarity: the art of calligraphy. You might not associate writing with warrior culture, but for samurai, calligraphy was an essential part of their spiritual and mental discipline. This form of art was more than just about creating beautiful characters. It was an exercise in precision, control, and mindfulness. Calligraphy, known as shodo in Japanese, became a key tool for samurai to express themselves and cultivate inner calm. The process of brushing ink on paper required total concentration, much like a meditative practice. Each stroke had to be deliberate and precise, demanding the samurai's full attention. Whether they were writing poems, records, or personal reflections, samurai practiced calligraphy not just as an art form, but as a way to sharpen their minds and maintain a calm, focused state. It was, in essence, a way to train the mind to stay still and disciplined, even when the world around them might be chaotic. Historians still debate the full extent of calligraphy's influence on the samurai, but what's clear is that it played an important role in their lives. It was a practice that required patience, attention to detail, and a sense of balance, virtues that were crucial for the samurai, both in battle and in their daily routines. Calligraphy, after all, wasn't just about creating aesthetically pleasing characters. It was about capturing the spirit of the moment and reflecting the samurai's inner state. Imagine yourself sitting in a quiet room, a brush in your hand, the delicate scent of ink filling the air. As you dip the brush into the ink, your mind focuses completely on the task at hand. You take a deep breath, letting go of any distractions. With each stroke of the brush, you're not just writing, you're entering a state of mindfulness, fully immersed in the present. This is what the samurai experienced each time they practiced calligraphy. It wasn't just about creating words, it was about training their minds to remain focused and calm, even under pressure. The connection between calligraphy and mindfulness is especially apparent when you look at the relationship between the brush and the character being formed. Every stroke was a reflection of the samurai's mental state. If their mind was distracted or unsettled, the brushwork would show it. But if their mind was calm and focused, the strokes would be smooth, balanced, and precise. In this way, calligraphy was not just a way for the samurai to express themselves, it was a way to reflect their inner clarity and peace. For the samurai, practicing calligraphy wasn't just a hobby, it was a form of training that mirrored their martial practices. Just as they trained their bodies to perform precise movements in battle, they trained their minds through the careful, deliberate act of writing. Calligraphy demanded that the samurai be fully present in the moment, letting go of any distractions or worries that might cloud their focus. In this way, calligraphy was another path to cultivating the mental discipline that was so essential to the samurai's way of life. As you reflect on this, you might begin to see how the practice of calligraphy was a perfect complement to the samurai's other mindfulness practices. Whether they were meditating, practicing swordsmanship, or engaging in the tea ceremony, the samurai's approach to life was one of complete focus and presence. Calligraphy was simply another tool in their arsenal for cultivating clarity, balance, and mental fortitude. And as they practiced, they weren't just creating beautiful characters. They were shaping their minds, honing their ability to stay calm and focused in the face of life's challenges. While the samurai's mindfulness practices extended into their quiet moments of meditation and artistry. Their rituals before combat were perhaps the most intense and direct applications of their mental discipline. Before heading into battle, the samurai would engage in a series of calming and centering rituals designed to prepare their minds and spirits for the violence ahead. This preparation wasn't about hyping up for combat, it was about finding stillness and clarity in the midst of impending chaos. One of the key aspects of this pre-battle mindfulness was the practice of quiet contemplation. Before donning their armor or stepping onto the battlefield, many samurai would sit in meditation, clearing their minds and focusing their thoughts. They understood that mental clarity was just as important as physical preparation, and they took the time to center themselves before the storm of battle. Imagine standing in the stillness of a small, dimly lit room, your sword resting beside you as you focus only on your breath. The sounds of the outside world fade away, and you enter a space of total mental focus. This moment of quiet before the battle was critical for the samurai. It allowed them to release any anxiety, fear, or distractions that might cloud their judgment. Historians still debate the extent to which this type of meditation was practiced by all samurai, but the stories of warriors like Miyamoto Musashi, one of Japan's most famous swordsmen, suggest that these rituals were central to their approach to combat. Musashi, in particular, was known for his ability to stay calm and focused in the heat of battle, an ability that he attributed to his deep practice of meditation and mindfulness. He believed that to win in combat, a warrior had to be completely aware, fully present, and unclouded by emotions or thoughts. It was this mental clarity that allowed him to make split-second decisions that often determined the outcome of his duels. In the chaos of battle, when swords clashed and the noise of conflict filled the air, the samurai's mental discipline allowed them to stay calm and act with precision. This was the true test of their mindfulness. It wasn't enough to be calm when sitting in a garden or practicing calligraphy. You had to be able to summon that same stillness in the midst of life-threatening circumstances. And the samurai did just that. Their ability to remain present, focused, and in control, even in the most extreme situations, was one of the key reasons they were such formidable warriors. But what exactly did this mental clarity look like in practice? Picture yourself standing in the midst of a battlefield. The sounds of war are deafening, yet you remain calm. Your breath is steady, your mind clear. You are fully aware of every movement around you, but you aren't distracted by the noise, the violence, or the fear. You are simply present. In this moment, you can make quick, decisive movements, each one measured and precise. The chaos of battle is no longer overwhelming. It's simply another part of the world you're engaged with, and you're able to move through it with clarity and purpose. This ability to stay calm and focused during the chaos of battle wasn't just about physical training, it was about mental preparation. The samurai believed that their minds had to be as sharp as their swords, and they took every opportunity to practice and hone that sharpness. Whether it was through meditation, sword training, or other mindfulness practices, the samurai knew that the clarity of their minds could mean the difference between life and death in battle. The practice of mindfulness before combat was also about accepting the reality of death. The samurai, influenced by Zen teachings, viewed death as a natural part of life, and this acceptance allowed them to face battle without fear. They didn't fight with the desperation of someone trying to avoid death. They fought with the calm resolve of someone who had already come to terms with it. This mental peace in the face of death allowed them to remain focused on their duties, undistracted by fear or hesitation. In the world of the samurai, every tool and every piece of equipment had significance, but perhaps none more so than the katana, the samurai sword. While you might think of it primarily as a weapon, it was also a profound symbol of mindfulness and mental focus. To the samurai, the katana was more than just a blade. It was an extension of the mind, a physical manifestation of their discipline and clarity. It was a tool for both physical and mental precision, and it embodied the samurai's constant pursuit of mastery and focus. The samurai sword wasn't something they simply wielded in battle. It was treated with the utmost care, attention, and respect. Every part of the katana's creation, from the forging of the blade to the wrapping of the handle, required total focus and meticulous attention to detail. Just like in meditation, every movement in the creation and care of the katana had to be performed with precision and mindfulness. The sword's sharpness was a direct reflection of the samurai's mental sharpness. A dull blade represented a dull mind, while a finely honed katana was the result of constant practice and mental discipline. Historians still argue about the exact role of the katana in samurai culture. Was it purely a practical weapon, or did it have a more spiritual significance? Many believe the katana represented the samurai's soul, a belief that stemmed from both their martial practices and their philosophical teachings. The sword was the focal point of their being. It was what they carried into battle, but also what they used to perform every act with precision and clarity. The act of drawing the katana was an act of mental focus, an instantaneous switch from calmness to readiness. When a samurai drew his katana, it wasn't just about the fight ahead. It was about becoming one with the sword. The motion of unsheathing. The blade was a meditative act in itself. The samurai would take a moment to center themselves, to focus their mind, and to prepare their spirit for whatever confrontation lay ahead. This ritual wasn't rushed or impulsive. It was deliberate, slow, and deeply mindful. The samurai's mastery of their sword was a reflection of their mastery over their own minds. Every movement with the blade, whether it was a defensive parry or a swift strike, required mental clarity and purpose. Imagine standing in front of your opponent, your hand firmly gripping the katana's handle. Before you make a move, you pause, your mind clears, your breath steady. You are not thinking of victory or defeat, only of the present moment. The sound of your breath, the grip of the katana in your hands, the focused clarity of your thoughts. Every movement you make with the sword is deliberate, controlled, and precise. Your mind and body are in perfect harmony, working together in the pursuit of mastery. The katana was more than just a tool, it was a teacher. The samurai learned to focus their entire being on every cut, every strike, every movement with the blade. In doing so, they cultivated a deep sense of mindfulness that was not just about fighting, but about living. Whether they were engaged in battle or simply maintaining their katana, the samurai understood that true mastery came from mindfulness, not force. And so, the katana became a symbol not only of their warrior status, but of their constant journey toward mental clarity, control, and precision. In a way, the samurai's relationship with their sword mirrored their relationship with their own minds. Just as they polished the blade until it gleamed with perfection, they worked tirelessly to refine their mental state. The sword was the perfect embodiment of the samurai's life. Sharp, precise, disciplined, and constantly in the process of being perfected. While the samurai's relationship with their sword was one of the most intimate forms of mindfulness they practiced, their daily lives also included other rituals that reinforced their mental discipline. These practices, conducted at home or in the company of others, were a key part of how samurai lived their lives with constant awareness and precision. The rituals of the samurai household were all designed to bring focus, calm, and purpose to everyday life. From the preparation of food to the care of their personal belongings, everything was done with intention. The act of preparing food, for example, was a meditative practice in its own right. The samurai believed that food was not just nourishment for the body, but also for the soul. The preparation of meals was a quiet, focused activity that required attention to detail, from the way ingredients were chopped to how the food was presented. There was no rush in the kitchen. Every movement was deliberate and mindful. The samurai chef would take time to ensure that every dish was not just delicious, but also visually appealing and carefully arranged. This focus on the aesthetics of food was deeply connected to their values of simplicity and beauty, which were key aspects of their philosophy. Historians still argue about the exact role of food preparation in the samurai's life. Some suggest that this was merely a functional activity, while others argue that it was an extension of their mindfulness practice, helping them to stay centered and calm. Regardless of its origins, food preparation was undoubtedly an important part of the samurai's daily routine, allowing them to practice mindfulness in a way that was accessible and practical. Beyond food, the samurai household was also a place where personal care and maintenance of possessions were treated with the same level of reverence. Samurai warriors were known for taking great pride in their personal belongings, particularly their armor and clothing. Every piece of armor was meticulously cleaned and maintained, ensuring that it was always in perfect condition. The process of caring for these items, like polishing the sword or repairing the armor, required focus and attention to detail. The samurai understood that the care they gave to their possessions reflected their mental state. A well-maintained sword or armor symbolized a well-maintained mind, sharp, disciplined, and ready for anything. Imagine yourself in the samurai's household. The early morning light filters through paper windows, and you hear the sound of a sword being carefully wiped down with a cloth. The samurai warrior takes a moment to admire the blade, ensuring that no rust or wear has marred its surface. As they work, they are completely present in the task, every movement slow and purposeful. There's no rush, no distraction, only the quiet hum of the task at hand. This attention to detail wasn't just about the sword. It was about cultivating a state of mindfulness that extended to everything they did. Whether it was the act of sharpening a blade or folding a kimono, each action required full presence and focus. In many ways, the samurai household was a sanctuary, a place where they could return to the core principles of Bushido, even in the midst of a turbulent world. The daily rituals performed within these walls helped the samurai to reset and maintain their mental clarity. These small, deliberate acts of mindfulness were as important as their combat training. After all, being a samurai wasn't just about fighting. It was about living with purpose and maintaining mental discipline in every aspect of life. For the samurai, mindfulness wasn't a state they only sought in quiet moments of meditation. It was something they carried with them throughout, their entire day, in everything they did. Whether in the battlefield, at home, or in the garden, their lives were a series of practices designed to keep them grounded, calm, and centered. And it was through these everyday rituals that they were able to maintain their inner peace, preparing them to face whatever challenges came their way, both physical and mental. As we continue exploring the samurai's deep connection with mindfulness, we find that one of the most integral practices they embraced was the art of archery. Archery, known as kyudo in Japanese, was not just a martial skill for the samurai. It was a discipline that demanded the same level of mental focus and precision as their swordsmanship. In fact, kyudo was regarded by many samurai as an almost sacred practice, one that combined physical skill with deep spiritual mindfulness. Unlike modern archery, where the focus is often on hitting a target, kyudo was about much more than just shooting arrows. The goal was not to hit the bullseye. The goal was to enter a state of complete harmony between mind, body, and bow. Every shot required total concentration, stillness, and an awareness of both the self and the surrounding world. It was a form of moving meditation, where the physical act of drawing and releasing the bow became a meditative practice that sharpened the mind. Historians still argue whether archery was a primary focus for all samurai, or whether it was more of a specialized skill for certain groups. Some samurai practiced archery extensively, while others focused more on sword fighting. However, it's clear that kyudo was deeply tied to the samurai's overall philosophy of mindfulness. The principles of kyudo were rooted in Zen teachings, emphasizing the importance of being present in every moment and finding balance within oneself. The act of drawing the bow, aiming and releasing the arrow was not rushed or thoughtlessly done. It was a deliberate, focused process that required the practitioner to be fully aware of every step, every movement, and every breath. Imagine yourself standing in a serene, quiet archery range, the bow in your hands, the arrow carefully nocked in place. You take a deep breath, focusing on the feel of the bowstring in your hands, the tension of the string, and the movement of your body as you prepare to shoot. Your mind is calm, your thoughts quieted, and you are fully aware of the moment. With perfect stillness, you release the arrow. There's no rush, no expectation of the outcome, just the focused awareness of the action itself. In this moment, you are completely present, and that presence is the essence of mindfulness. The practice of Kyudo taught the samurai not just about physical accuracy, but about mental precision. Just like in swordsmanship, each movement in archery was deliberate and thoughtful. There was no place for distraction. Every shot was an opportunity to practice mental clarity, to bring one's mind into focus, and to connect with the present moment. This practice wasn't about achieving perfection. It was about cultivating an awareness that transcended the external world and centered entirely on the self. The mindfulness cultivated through Kyudo also extended to the samurai's approach to combat. Whether they were wielding a sword or drawing an arrow, the samurai understood that their mental state directly influenced their physical performance. In battle, just as in archery, a clear mind and focused attention could mean the difference between success and failure. The samurai used Kyudo as a way to train their minds to remain calm and centered, no matter the chaos that might surround them. In the quiet practice of archery, the samurai could hone their ability to act with precision and clarity without being clouded by emotions or distractions. It was an exercise in both physical control and mental discipline, where every shot was a reflection of the practitioner's internal state. And just as with other mindfulness practices, Kyudo was a reminder that the journey towards mastery, whether in martial arts, mental discipline, or life itself, was never about perfection. It was about being fully present in every moment, embracing each challenge with clarity and calm. Moving forward from the peaceful practice of Kyudo, let's look at how the samurai approached the art of war with mindfulness. It might seem counterintuitive to associate mindfulness with battle, where life and death hang in the balance. But the samurai believed that true mastery in combat didn't come from brute force or aggression. It came from a calm and centered mind. They knew that in the heat of battle, emotional reactions like fear, rage, or desperation could cloud their judgment and slow their reactions. The key to success on the battlefield, for them, was maintaining that same inner stillness they practiced in meditation and other mindful activities. One of the key concepts that guided the samurai's approach to battle was heiho, or the art of war. The principles of heiho were built on mindfulness, observation, and strategy, rather than pure physical power. Samurai commanders would study their opponent's movements, patterns, and habits with the same focus they applied to their meditation practices. A battle was never just a chaotic exchange of sword strikes. It was a battle of wits, strategy, and mental awareness. Samurai didn't rush in recklessly. They waited for the right moment, allowing their opponents to reveal their weaknesses. In fact, many samurai were masters of psychological warfare, using deception and subtle tactics to outmaneuver their enemies. Historians still debate how much of heiho was a formalized discipline as we know it today, versus a more intuitive set of practices that evolved over time. However, the samurai certainly valued strategy as much as physical combat. In many ways, their approach to warfare was similar to the mental focus they applied to other parts of their lives, such as their swordplay, archery, and calligraphy. Whether they were in battle or simply going about their daily routines, they applied the same principles of focus, discipline, and awareness. Imagine being a samurai commander on the eve of battle. You sit in your tent, calmly observing the movements of your troops, analyzing every piece of information that comes to you. The air is thick with tension, but you remain still, your mind sharp and focused. You know that panic or rash decisions could cost you everything, so you let go of any anxiety and stay present, analyzing your options. As the battle begins, you move with precision, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Each movement, each decision is made with mindfulness, allowing you to anticipate the moves of your enemy with startling clarity. For the samurai, maintaining mental clarity during combat meant being able to react without hesitation or fear. They believed that if a warrior could quiet the chaos of the external world and focus solely on the present moment, they could anticipate their opponent's moves with remarkable precision. The samurai practiced this mental state not just in combat training but in real battles, where every action was intentional and measured. This was a profound example of how mindfulness could transform a chaotic, violent environment into something structured and controlled. The samurai also understood that sometimes the best way to engage in battle wasn't to fight at all. One of the key principles of Heiho was knowing when to fight and when to retreat. Samurai commanders, ever mindful of the ebb and flow of battle, knew that an honorable retreat could be just as powerful as a victory. They understood that rushing into battle without careful thought could lead to disaster, so they used their mindfulness to calculate the risks and rewards of every action. Every battle was a reflection of their mental discipline. Even when fighting for their lives, they stayed grounded in the present, clear-headed and in control. In this way, the samurai's approach to war was not just about the physical confrontation, it was about the mental clarity that guided them through the chaos. In combat, as in life, the samurai knew that the mind was the most important weapon they had. They trained it relentlessly, applying the same focus and discipline they brought to meditation, archery, and swordsmanship to the battlefield. By doing so, they became not only masterful warriors, but also masters of their own minds. And it was this mastery that allowed them to triumph in battle and in life. As we transition from the mental clarity needed in battle to a more personal aspect of the samurai's life, we arrive at their unique relationship with death. Mindfulness, as you might expect, extended into their final moments as well. The samurai's approach to death was unlike most. They didn't fear it, nor did they desperately try to avoid it. Instead, they embraced death as an inevitable part of life, something to be accepted with grace and dignity. This acceptance was not born from resignation, but from the deep understanding that death was simply another moment in the natural flow of existence, much like birth or the changing of the seasons. This perspective was deeply influenced by Zen Buddhism, which taught the samurai that life and death were interconnected. For a samurai, the awareness of their mortality was not something to be afraid of, but something to live with. Death wasn't an enemy to be defeated. It was a constant companion, reminding them to live fully in each moment. This mindfulness of death was reflected in their actions, attitudes, and their approach to battle. A samurai, who was mentally prepared for death, was able to act with the clarity and focus needed to perform their duties without fear clouding their judgment. They understood that in the heat of battle, fear of death could lead to hesitation or reckless actions, so they trained themselves to face death with calmness and resolve. Historians still debate the depth of the samurai's relationship with death, wondering whether it was a product of Zen influence, a result of Bushido's honor code, or simply a natural response to the constant violence of their lives. Regardless of the cause, it is clear that this relationship with death was central to the samurai's approach to life and warfare. Many samurai chose to practice seppuku, or ritual suicide, when they felt their honor was in question or when they could no longer serve their master. This practice, while extreme, was an act of mindfulness in itself. It wasn't about escape, but about maintaining control over their fate. In a world where external circumstances could be uncontrollable, the samurai sought to control their own deaths with the same clarity and discipline they applied to their lives. Imagine yourself in the quiet of a samurai's final moments, sitting in seiza, the formal kneeling position, surrounded by silence. Your thoughts are clear, your mind calm, your spirit at peace. In this moment, you are fully aware of the decision you're about to make. There's no panic, no fear, only a deep acceptance of the natural flow of life. The ritual is a way to honor your life, your purpose, and the path you have walked. You are not rushing to meet death. You are simply acknowledging that it is a part of your journey. In these final moments, the samurai's mindfulness becomes a quiet, peaceful surrender to the inevitable. The practice of accepting death also shaped the way the samurai lived their daily lives. They didn't take their time on earth for granted. Every moment was an opportunity to practice mindfulness, to hone their skills, and to live according to the principles of Bushido. They understood that the awareness of their mortality could make each day more meaningful, more deliberate. The samurai didn't wait for death to come to them. They lived their lives in such a way that when death did arrive, they would face it with honor, calmness, and grace. This mindfulness of death also influenced the samurai's approach to their legacy. They didn't fight just to survive. They fought to honor their code, their lord, and their families. Their actions, their honor, and their integrity were more important than the number of victories or the wealth they accumulated. The samurai understood that their legacy would not be measured by their material possessions, but by how they lived and faced their inevitable death. This awareness of legacy was another form of mindfulness. The understanding that how you live each moment shapes the impact you leave on the world. In the context of modern life, we often push away thoughts of death, fearing it or avoiding it. But for the samurai, their acceptance of death allowed them to live with an intense focus and clarity that we might all learn from. Their approach to mortality wasn't a morbid obsession. It was a way of reminding themselves to live fully, with awareness and purpose. And in this way, the samurai's mindfulness was not only a tool for facing battle, but a philosophy for living. Having explored the samurai's approach to death, let's now shift to their relentless pursuit of perfection through mindfulness. For the samurai, life was not about achieving perfection in a singular moment, but about the continual striving to improve oneself, mentally, physically, and spiritually. This pursuit of perfection wasn't about ego or vanity. It was about understanding that true mastery came from constant discipline, from the daily practice of mindfulness in all aspects of life. This drive for perfection extended to everything they did, from their martial arts training to their personal habits. The samurai were not content with mediocrity in any form. Every movement, every sword stroke, every word spoken, and every decision made was an opportunity to practice mindfulness and improve. The principle of striving for excellence was rooted in Bushido, which emphasized the value of personal development and the relentless pursuit of mastery. But unlike some modern interpretations of perfectionism, the samurai's focus was not on outward accolades or success. It was about inner peace and self-mastery. Historians still argue about whether the samurai's obsession with perfection was a result of their martial culture or whether it was influenced by Zen teachings. Some scholars suggest that the Zen idea of satori, or sudden enlightenment, played a key role in the samurai's pursuit of perfection. This concept encouraged them to remain ever vigilant, continuously working on their mind, body, and spirit to achieve a state of balance and clarity. The samurai didn't just want to be the best at what they did. They wanted to embody mindfulness in every moment of their lives, to become so immersed in their craft that they lost all sense of self-consciousness. Picture the samurai at the height of their training, whether they were practicing swordsmanship, archery, or hand-to-hand combat. Every movement was calculated and deliberate, a reflection of their unyielding focus on improvement. With each swing of the sword, each release of the arrow, they were not just working toward physical mastery, they were refining their mental discipline. The goal wasn't to be perfect in the sense of flawless execution. It was to be completely present in the process, constantly improving, constantly striving for that next level of mastery. The samurai were also mindful of their behavior in their personal lives, even in the most mundane aspects of their existence, whether it was maintaining their homes, interacting with others, or engaging in the tea ceremony. They approached each task with the same commitment to mindfulness and perfection. They understood that true mastery wasn't about excelling in one area of life while neglecting others. It was about bringing the same level of focus and discipline to everything they did. This pursuit of perfection through mindfulness helped them build lives that were marked by integrity, purpose, and balance. As you reflect on the samurai's pursuit of perfection, it's important to recognize that their path was not about reaching some idealized state of flawlessness. It was about cultivating a mindset that valued continuous growth. The samurai knew that perfection was an illusion, a moving target that could never truly be attained. But this understanding didn't deter them, it motivated them. The journey itself, the constant striving to improve and refine, was what made their practice so valuable. Each step toward mastery was an opportunity to become more present, more focused, and more attuned to the world around them. In many ways, the samurai's pursuit of perfection was an expression of their mindfulness. They didn't see their journey as a race towards some final, distant goal. Instead, they understood that each moment of effort, each small improvement, was part of the process. And this process was as much about mental clarity and self-discipline as it was about skill development. The samurai were committed not just to becoming better warriors or better leaders. They were committed to becoming better versions of themselves, constantly refining their ability to live with intention and awareness. Their relentless pursuit of perfection also shaped their relationships with others. The samurai understood that in order to serve their lord, protect their family, and live by the principles of Bushido, they needed to maintain a deep sense of self-awareness. Their pursuit of perfection wasn't just about self-actualization, it was about being the best version of themselves for the sake of others. They were mindful not only of their own growth, but also of how their actions affected the world around them. This mindfulness extended to their interactions with others, ensuring that every relationship was built on respect, honor, and the pursuit of collective improvement. As we reach the final chapter of our journey through the samurai's world of mindfulness, it's time to reflect on the lasting legacy of these warriors. While the samurai as a class may have faded into history, their practices of mindfulness continue to influence modern-day martial arts, meditation, and even our approach to personal growth. The principles of mental clarity, self-discipline, and presence that were so integral to the samurai's way of life have resonated throughout the centuries, shaping not just warriors, but also thinkers, artists, and everyday people seeking a more mindful existence. The samurai didn't just create a system of martial prowess, they created a way of life, one that was steeped in mental discipline and clarity. Their mindfulness practices were not separate from their warrior identity. They were the foundation upon which their entire existence was built. In a world that constantly demands more from us, it's easy to lose sight of the importance of mental presence. But the samurai knew that without a clear mind, no task could be truly mastered. Whether it was the focus needed in a sword fight, the precision required for archery, or the stillness practiced in meditation, the samurai understood that mental clarity was the key to everything. Historians still argue whether the samurai's mindfulness was a product of their time, shaped by the brutal conditions of their world, or whether it was a timeless principle that transcended generations. Some suggest that the mental discipline practiced by the samurai was a direct result of their need to be hyper-aware in a chaotic and often violent society. Others believe that their mindfulness practices were deeply tied to Zen Buddhism and the teachings of other spiritual traditions, which encouraged a balance of body and mind. Regardless of the origin, what's undeniable is that the samurai's ability to maintain mental clarity and focus has inspired generations of people across the world. In the modern age, many of the samurai's practices have been adopted by those seeking peace in their busy lives. Meditation, for example, has become a common practice for individuals in all walks of life. Just as the samurai sat in stillness to clear their minds before battle, people today use meditation to ground themselves, reduce stress, and cultivate awareness. The same mindfulness that helped samurai face death with calmness and precision can now be used by anyone seeking to bring balance to their daily lives. But the legacy of the samurai doesn't stop with meditation. The samurai's approach to perfection, their constant striving for self-improvement, and their deep awareness of the present moment continue to influence martial arts practitioners today. Whether in Japan, the United States, or elsewhere in the world, the practice of martial arts is still deeply rooted in the samurai's values of discipline, focus, and mindfulness. The samurai were not just warriors, they were artists, philosophers, and teachers. Their approach to combat was as much about the mind as it was about the body. And this balance, this integration of mind, body, and spirit, is something that continues to inspire modern martial artists. The principles of mindfulness practiced by the samurai also extend to leadership and personal development. Just as samurai, leaders were required to maintain clarity of thought, humility, and integrity. Today's leaders in all fields are called upon to lead with vision, empathy, and awareness. The samurai understood that leadership wasn't about dominance, it was about service to others. They embodied the idea that true leadership comes from self-awareness, and that the most effective leaders are those who can maintain inner clarity even in the most stressful of situations. So, as you drift off to sleep tonight, imagine yourself standing quietly, just as the samurai did, with a clear mind and a deep sense of purpose. Whether you're practicing mindfulness in the stillness of your own mind or striving to improve in your own life, remember that the samurai's legacy lives on. Their example shows us that mindfulness isn't just a practice, it's a way of life, one that brings us closer to our truest selves and allows us to navigate the challenges of life with calmness, clarity, and purpose. Now, as you relax into the quiet of the evening, allow the samurai's wisdom to guide you. Let go of the day's distractions, breathe deeply, and embrace the stillness of the moment. In this peaceful space, you are free to simply be, just as the samurai were.